Today's episode of Non-Toxic Environments is brought to you by the Green Design Center. Hello, folks. Welcome back to Non-Toxic Environments. Jay, this week we've got I think a really exciting topic. I say that every week. I know that. I mean, I've never started this saying we've got a really boring topic to talk about.
We don't want to overbill ourselves, so I understand what you're saying. And everyone out there, you know, we are humble. It may not sound like it, but we try to be. Right. So we've talked about long and hard about how to build a healthy house.
Right.
And we've gone from foundation to the top of your roof and back.
Mm-hmm.
To talk about how to do that. Well, we thought that it might be a good idea to talk about how to take care of it now.
Oh, the maintenance aspect of it. Yeah, it's not as if you can just build it and it's done, right?
Right. Well, yeah. And we know that good maintenance leads to longevity. Well, you know, this brings up a thought I had about this, and that is for so long, and maybe I'm beating a drum that's long dead, but for so long, the whole rap on green building products and environmental building products is they didn't hold up.
Right.
They couldn't hold up. And
right.
Because of that, we don't want to use them. Well, you know, 30 years later, that's a fallacy. We know that these products are good or better than what's conventionally available. They're more expensive because it takes more money to build them right and build them safely.
Exactly right.
However, everything requires a sense of maintenance, no matter whether it's a conventional product, an eco product, or any product. It requires that, you know, that care, which is total common sense again, right? It's real simple.
Well, a lot is common sense and a lot is, thinking about it just a little bit. You know, to your point before, Jay, what I'll say about longevity and so forth is most manufacturers of environmentally friendly and healthy building materials never wants to have their products associated with short-lived, right?
Right.
They don't want people complaining that, well, I used this product, but it didn't last.
Right.
And 25 years ago, there were a lot of products in the market that, you know, and understandably so, this was a very new industry. Some manufacturers just didn't know how to make an eco-friendly or a healthy product that can actually last. But no manufacturer these days wants to be told that their product is costing more and doesn't last as long. So they strive to make materials that are better than what the industry standard is.
Yes.
You know, for years, I would tell customers with Safe Coat, you know, you'll get sick of the color before you'll ever have to repaint due to durability issues. And case in point, right before we started recording, I had a client in the showroom and she drove about 60 miles to come here and pick up a gallon of product. But she said, I used Safe Coat when I built this house, I don't know, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And she said, we just put it up on the market to sell. And so we had to do some touch-ups. And she goes, I was shocked at how little of the house I actually had to touch up. She goes, one area in the dining room where a chair kept on hitting.
Yeah.
But she said, all these years, you know, with a couple of kids under the age of 10 with their hands all over these walls, the paint looks perfect.
Yeah.
So, you know, you have to look at the fact that maybe things are a little more expensive sometimes when you buy new, because not just because it's healthy, but more so because it's high quality.
Yeah, and this is a part of the life cycle conversation as well,
sure.
Right?
Sure.
And it's so interesting. You think about life cycle and you think, well, if you've got a good quality product and it's staying on the walls and it's holding up for 20 years, do the math.
Exactly.
I mean, it's pretty simple. It's like that. I'm getting a lot of bang out of my buck for that.
Exactly right.
All right, let's go. You actually created a beautiful list. Why don't we just tackle it right from the very top?
Okay. So I will say this again, this is all about maintaining the home. And there are more things to add to this list. And folks, if you have others to add to the list, please feel free to email them to me, andy@degreeofgreen.com. I would love to add them to the list, and maybe we'd do a second show sometime about this.
Sure.
But these are some of the things that I thought about. This does not include furnishing the home.
Right.
So when we talk about building a healthy home, the next conversation usually is, okay, now that you built it, how do you furnish it?
Mm-hmm.
Furniture, mattresses, so forth. That's another topic for another day.
Yeah.
This is talking about how do you maintain it. So here it is in the middle of spring. Great time to open up the doors and windows and get things cleaned out. So let's talk about this list. First of all is flooring and cabinetry maintenance.
Okay.
Now, what I mean by this is typically wood maintenance.
Right.
Wood for cabinetry, wood for flooring is not just something that you can just sort of allow to just be there and function and not have to touch it. The cabinetry, typically here in the upper Midwest and other parts of the country, during wintertime, it gets very, very dry. So it's very cold, very dry. So our woodwork shrinks. And so we have to think about, before it becomes summertime, tightening up drawer pulls, knobs, and our other hardware, hinges, and so forth. We also want to make sure that as long as we're in the spring cleaning mode, let's wipe down those cabinet doors.
Yeah.
Using something like the AFM multi-purpose cleaner in some warm water. Get rid of that layer of cooking oil that tends to settle after 6 months of cooking and throughout the winter.
There's also human oil. There's a tendency sometimes when we're in a hurry not to grab the hardware.
Yes.
And so we'll put our hands on the wood itself and on the coating itself. And what happens is over time, this oil in your skin transfers to the coating.
Exactly right.
Yep.
And this also has to do with wood flooring. Sometimes you get some gapping in wintertime. Just make sure that those boards aren't loose, so it doesn't become a trip hazard. Make sure that if the floor did shrink so much that maybe some of the trim pieces are no longer covering those gaps, I would like, what I do is I put a piece of blue tape next to those points, and I just observe for the next couple of weeks to the next month or so to see if the wood swells back into shape to fill that area. Otherwise, if it doesn't, you might need to take care of that another way.
Oh, that's a nice tip. You know what I do with our hardwood in our home is all old Doug fir in one part of the house and another species. But because I'm fortunate enough to live in California, I can keep my house pretty much open all year round. So we've got our doors open, our windows open. It's amazing how much dust comes in on the floor in one day. And not that dust by itself necessarily an issue, other than the fact that you've got dust all over the place. And if you're breathing dust, that's maybe not a great idea. But what I do is I bought myself one of those larger industrial type dust mops. And I have it on the end of a broom handle. And what I do is I come in and I just kind of dust mop my floor, probably at least three, 4 times a week. I do that just to keep the dust, of course, and I want to keep it clean, but it helps to keep from what can turn into something really bad, which is you start grinding your floor. You're walking in and you're carrying in things from the outside, and you start to scuff the floor and you start to wear out the finish. This is how finishes get worn out. They're friction. Friction's one of the big things that kind of takes floors down. Obviously exposure to the sun, that kind of can have a deleterious effect on the flooring. But I like that idea of kind of a more repetitive kind of cleaning. Now, when I have to do heavier cleaning, where I have to actually wet mop the floor, you got to be very careful with wood. You don't want to load up that floor with a lot of water. So it's a very light, damp mopping, as you alluded to earlier. We make a nice cleaner, a concentrate called Safe Choice All-Purpose Cleaner. I mix with that with a little bit of warm water, and I do a light, damp mopping, and there's no residue. So I walk away from that and I'm feeling clean. I am spanking clean.
Fantastic. All right. So washing and vacuuming windows to reduce the chances of mold. Let me describe this. Throughout the year, whether it's rainy season, snow season, what have you, when your windows are closed, you get a lot of debris that slaps up against the glass and then trickles down.
Yep.
And it's supposed to drain out these little weep holes on the outside of the window. Well, it usually doesn't all drain out. You get some of that debris typically organic matter that gets stuck into the window frame and in the track of the window. And in springtime or the next nice day, you open up your window and here you have this debris that is dried, and it could contain mold spores and active mold spores, because it's the mold is feeding on that organic debris that's stuck in the window track.
Yeah.
So a couple times a year, I like to open up the windows, first wash the windows, the glass itself inside and out. And then I open them up and I vacuum and I wipe down the track, the base of the window, to get rid of all of that debris, all that organic matter, and then wipe that down. Again, that dust that you talked about, Jay, that comes into the house, this is another method it comes in.
Mhm.
And typically because of how it got into the window through rain that's, filtering through pollution and so forth, that stuff gets stuck in that window. So we want to get rid of that.
Right. If you've got screens on your windows, if you're going to wash your windows on the outside, you take your screens off your windows.
Yes.
Obviously, you're going to dust them and make
Yes.
sure that they are dust free. Here's another thought I had, and something I've done, and I don't know what you'll think of this, but it's the concept of giving your house a bath.
Mm.
I mean, I will walk around, and of course, you got to make sure everything's tight and your windows are closed. If you're going to wash your windows on the outside, this makes some sense. I will go around and literally take a hose and hose off the side of my house.
Yes.
And it's amazing how much dirt collects on the side of the house. So you
Agreed.
got dirt, you got airborne contaminants. What's that going to do? Over time, that's going to put a strain on your paint job.
Yes.
Not to mention the fact that when you wash your house, after you wash, you're going to go, oh my God, it looks like I just got my house painted.
Right.
It looks like a
I forgot how good my house looked.
My house looked fantastic, and here where I am, which is basically, we're desert for all intents and purposes. Despite what you think, folks, San Diego, if we didn't have people come in and plant things and didn't have imported water, we would look like northern Baja California,
Sure.
which is desert. So we are loaded with dust and dirt, and I got jets flying over my house because we're kind of in the path of the airport.
Mhm.
Who knows what's coming off an airplane?
Right.
There's probably a lot of particulates. Anyway, just something you think about.
Yeah.
Give your exterior of your house a bath, and then wash your windows, and do as Andy suggested, clean out around those windows so you don't get any mold showing up later. And got a good thing going on.
Excellent. Great idea. All right. So kind of along those lines, keeping with the cleaning mentality here, keeping your bathroom surfaces clean and dry. So, we all know that bathrooms are a perfect breeding ground for mold and mildew because of the humidity, the moisture.
Right.
Every time you bathe or take a shower, it's not just steam that's in the air. It's also soap scum and dead skin cells.
Right.
And that will eventually stick to the walls or the surfaces of your bathroom. And this is why I advocate for really, really good ventilation in a bathroom, and making sure that that vent runs, or that fan runs, for at least 20 to 30 minutes after a shower. Get rid of that moisture.
Right.
But inevitably, some of it's going to get stuck to the wall, and it's
Mhm.
going to contain food source for mold. So a couple times a year, at least, you need to wipe down the walls in the bathroom. And again, using the AFM multi-purpose cleaner and water. And folks, the reason why both Jay and I recommend that product is not just because, Jay works for AFM.
Yeah.
It's because of the fact that it is one of the only cleaners that I know of that's completely free of fragrances, and it doesn't leave a residue.
Right.
Now, I believe Shackley Basic H is pretty close.
Mhm.
And some people in a pinch will even use liquid ivory soap.
Mhm.
I've heard that that's been a little more troublesome lately, but
Okay.
To each his own here.
Right.
I don't use Simple Green because of that aroma.
Correct.
I think the Super Clean, as it used to be called, is just perfect for these applications. Now, again, wiping down the walls, getting rid of that soap scum, wiping down all of the tile in the shower and the caulk joints. Again, you should keep those areas clean, even though you're showering in there, you think all the soap and all the water should be self-cleaning, and it's not.
Yeah.
You actually need to get in there because of skin oils that will settle.
Yep.
And so, again, doing this twice a year really is minimal. I think the shower area should be cleaned once a week.
We have a walk-in shower. It's a steam shower, so it's completely, I can completely close it off. You know what's sitting? I got a little bench in there we can sit on. And on that little bench, I have a bottle of hydrogen peroxide. And what I do is just after I've showered, to let it dry out a little bit, then I will actually spray. It's all a subway tile in there. I will just spray everything with hydrogen peroxide, just a 3%, just as kind of a little bit, a real mild sterilizer.
Great idea.
It works great. It's non-toxic. You just keep a spray bottle right there next to your shower or by your bath and just let it dry and then spray away. Perfect.
Keeps the tile clean, keeps the grout clean.
Absolutely.
Very good idea. Right now in the mainstream residential construction world, the subject of building a healthy home is dealt with mainly as an energy-saving and global environmental issue. Of course, new methods to reduce outdoor air pollution and to cut down on our energy costs are definitely friendlier to our environment and our wallets. Yet these methods do not make a home healthy. To us, building a healthy home means that it's actually healthier and safer for the human occupants, yet as attractive, durable, and affordable as one that is not pollutant-free. There are multiple components required to build a truly healthy home, and no single component will do it by itself. A systems approach is needed that integrates all the different aspects that comprise a healthy home. Using HVAC equipment that controls moisture to minimize mold, mildew, and provide continuous fresh ventilation is very important. The increase of natural light in as many areas of the house as possible creates a sense of well-being for its occupants. The use of less synthetic carpeting and more hard surfaces to reduce dust and allergen collection areas. The most critical component involved, however, is the avoidance of the host of hazardous chemicals and noxious materials that are used throughout the building material industry. Now, we spend about 80 to 90% of our lives indoors. The first step in making our life healthier and more productive is to avoid the human health hazards by eliminating their sources and using safer, high-quality products. Removal of the unnecessary chemicals and toxic fumes from your homes reduces off-gassing that causes headaches, nausea, allergies, asthma, and worse. Just imagine a healthy home where occupants prevent a lifetime of medical problems and save thousands of dollars in prescription and healthcare costs. Currently, most builders are unfamiliar with the array of healthy building products that are available to them, and most big box retailers find it difficult to answer questions from customers about chemical content and toxicity. That's where we fit in. The Green Design Center has a 30-year history of providing those necessary, high-quality, safer building materials, as well as expert consulting services to assist the design and build teams with their systems approach to healthy building. We are GDC, Building for Health, and you can find us at www.thegreendesignCenter.com. Another tip I would give is I'd like to maintain humidity levels in a home so it doesn't lead to the production of mold. It doesn't lead to the elevation of chemical off-gassing. So one of the tips here is to make sure you have a working humidistat or a digital humidistat, something that can tell you what the humidity level is. And I keep one on every level of the home and just monitor that. So that'll tell you if you need to maybe turn a dehumidifier on, or in some cases, like here in the upper Midwest, turn a humidifier on in the wintertime to bring your humidity levels back up again.
Right. What do those units cost if you were to get one, just relatively speaking?
10 to $15.
Oh man, what an investment.
Yeah. And it's just, you need it in a place for a couple of days so you can see the swing of it throughout the daytime, nighttime, and then get an average.
Gotcha.
I like to keep humidity in that 35 to 40% range. That's my sweet spot.
Right.
I know some parts of the country, it's kind of hard to keep it at that level, but if you get above 55%, this is where mold growth starts. This is where chemical off-gassing increases. So if we keep it below that and even further below that, you don't want to go too low, because that'll cause shrinkage of wood and gapping and so forth. And it makes it uncomfortable just to live in the house. It makes it too dry to breathe properly.
Right.
All right. Now, this is one that I need to stress with people. When folks will ask me, what is the best method of cooking in their home, gas or electric? It's not just as easy as saying one or the other, because each of them have their pros and their cons. However, if you're looking at high-end appliances, I look at a high-end gas burning stove compared to maybe like an induction cooker, which is electric. I believe that a gas stove is actually healthier, because an induction stove creates such an electromagnetic current.
Yeah.
That, and every time you touch the pot, you become part of that circuit. I think that's more harmful than a gas stove, provided that you are buying a high quality product with sealed burners and you are checking for natural gas leaks. I purchased a very nice, I think it was a Viking range top for our house 15 years ago. Wonderful product, expensive, but I knew it was worth it because of the quality and so forth. And me and my wife do a lot of cooking, a lot of entertaining. Well, after about 8 years or so, I noticed when I went into the kitchen once in a while, the smell of gas. And so I bought a gas leak detector, and I found that all the burners were perfectly fine. It was underneath where the flexible gas line got screwed into the home gas line. And that connection over time, I mean, it can be sealed tight when it's new, but over time can degrade. And so I tell people now, when something is new, you can probably give it a couple of years, but after that, I check it at least once a year to make sure there isn't a slight gas leak, because you can always have a plumber come back in again and retighten and reseal that connection.
Right.
So that's where you're going to have gas leaks. It's going to be at those connections, whether it's this range or a water heater or a furnace. Anywhere there's the metal pipe, which is a black galvanized steel black pipe or iron pipe, that's going to be your main gas line, and then it usually connects to a flex pipe that goes to the appliance. And so anywhere those connections are, they can loosen up or degrade over time. So we want to maintain those.
Yeah, and it makes perfect sense, especially if you're thinking about leaving your house vacant for any period of time.
Yes.
You want to make sure you don't have any gas leaks that are in there, and the house is building up, and guess what? You come back to kaboom. So just real wisdom there.
Excellent.
So going from there, let's move on to very important HVAC, our air moving systems. What's the
HVAC? This is a big one.
Yeah, very big.
Whether you and let's talk about forced air, because I think that probably 90% of our listeners have a forced air system.
Right.
Maintaining that so that it's clean and tuned up kind of goes hand in hand. Ducts need to be cleaned. If they're flex ducts, you got to be careful, because not all flex ducts can be cleaned properly. Sometimes if they get dirty enough, you just have to replace them. But to bring somebody in to inspect the ducts, especially inspect the blower unit and the furnace and the AC, and to clean it, clean all the fittings, clean all the fans, all the connectors on the inside. Get rid of anything that can cause the blower fan to have to work harder. That's typically a buildup of dust. It's interesting. You think a fan that's in motion, blowing air, wouldn't collect dust, but it does. If you've ever seen a ceiling fan, or just a standard box fan, there's always dust on the blades.
It's shocking. It's so shocking how
It
much
is.
dust is on there.
Right. And so I have seen that just cleaning the fan in the blower unit can increase your efficiencies by 20 to 30%.
Wow. Yeah.
And so from an energy saving standpoint, that's one thing. From a healthy home standpoint, it means you're not going to be kicking around those the dust particles and probably mold spores that are stuck in that dust.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And then at the same time, making sure that the ductwork itself is properly sealed, so you're not bringing in air from areas where you shouldn't be. If you have like an attic system, making sure that all the grills and vent covers are also dusted properly and cleaned. And then if you have a air purification system, I want to make sure that it, depending on the type of system you have, you are replacing your filters, your UV lights, your carbon filtration, whatever you need. You got to get yourself on a schedule and make sure you put it on your digital calendar so it pops up as an event on your phone when it's time to change these filters out. Because if you don't maintain them, some people will say, well, I'll change the filter when I notice a difference. The problem with that is that your system ends up running harder and harder and harder to make up for the pressure loss.
Yeah.
So whether you think you need to or not, just change it. If it's a 6-month schedule, change it, at 6 months.
Sure. So you're talking about doing that with HVAC. What about like your water filters? What's your thinking on that?
It's the exact same thing, Jay. You want to make sure that you're on schedule for those.
Mm-hmm.
Water filters are interesting. And there's different types, obviously, whether it's just a filter in a tank, whether it's a reverse osmosis. They all have some different maintenance to them. But with a filter system, if water can't go through it, it just kind of goes around it and then it doesn't get filtered. So it really doesn't help anybody if you let that go too long. So if that is supposed to be changed, and you have to look at the rating on the water filter, something like an Aquasana or a Pure Water Systems, you're looking at changing your filters out every 10 years. So it's not, a huge deal on an annual basis. But for something like a filter in a shower head, a water filter in your water dispenser or ice maker in a refrigerator, these things you might need to change out once every 60 to 90 days in order to have effective filtration. So once again, I would say now's a good time to check them and probably change them, and then get yourself on a schedule of making sure you change it as the recommendation states, not just when you think it's time.
Right. And of course, since we're talking about water, keeping water out of your basement or your crawl space, right?
Oh, yeah, that's a tough one. Again, with homes built differently, whether you have a basement or a crawl space or a slab on grade, keeping water out of the home essentially is what we're trying to do. And all too often a home is built, and let's say it's a home with a basement, they'll backfill around the foundation. But over time, that backfill starts to settle. It starts to compact more and more and more because there's a lot of air in that backfilling.
Correct.
And gravity and moisture eventually settle that earth down. And eventually the pitch of the landscaping around the home starts to angle towards the home instead of away from it.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a great time to get outside and to actually measure the pitch, make sure that you have a good, 2 to 4 inch or more pitch away from the home. Make sure that if you have gutters, that they are cleaned so that water can run through them freely, that the downspouts are not only clean, but they expel far enough away from the house that it's not just, pushing water back towards the house again.
Yeah.
Because you could have the healthiest home in the world from day one, but after year 2 or year 3, when that landscaping changes naturally, you can run yourself into some pretty serious water issues.
Yeah. And of course, the mediation there is, French draining around the outside when you can, when it's convenient, French draining, sealing, make sure the exterior side of your foundation is sealed properly.
Yes. Yep.
This will all help keeping water from migrating. We don't want water to migrate through a wall system.
Well, no. And keep in mind that, 50 years ago, homes that had basements, those basements weren't built to be livable spaces.
That's right.
They were built to house mechanicals.
Correct.
They were just, it was assumed that would be kind of a cold and damp space.
Mm-hmm.
Now that, families are trying to use the basements for a rec room and maybe a bedroom, you really need to make sure that you maintain the humidity and moisture content properly down there. And, if that basement wall wasn't properly waterproofed, and if it's allowing moisture to come in, you need to find ways to get rid of that, because it makes for a very unhealthy environment for people to live in.
Would you recommend people just have a dehumidifier down in their basement if there's an issue?
A dehumidifier, for sure, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so this goes along to the point before about maintaining the humidity level in the basement.
Yeah.
I have in my basement, I've got 2 dehumidifiers. One that I run year round and one that I bring in summertime when I know in our area it gets very, very wet. And I found that since doing that, the entire home itself has become more comfortable.
Yeah.
And so I maintain about a 42% humidity level in the basement now.
Mm-hmm. And all of these things we're talking about, folks, are necessarily very expensive. When it gets expensive is when you let it go too long.
Exactly.
And then you're having to correct things that if just a little bit of routine maintenance would have been on schedule, A, you're going to feel better. B, you're not going to have big expensive bills when something breaks down. So Andy, the last thing I think we can talk about here, and I think it's certainly something that's been in the news and talked about, is our exposure to electrical, EMFs. And,
Right.
with 5G technology now, there's all kinds of talk about how are we being impacted by EMF exposures.
Right.
So
this is a very long topic if we were talking about new home construction.
Yes.
Right. Because there are many methods to mitigate the EMF exposures in our home. And it's both from home wiring as well as from your radio frequency waves, cell towers, and so forth, Wi-Fi. But in an existing home, we're not going to be rewiring the house. So we're talking about things that you can do to maintain your existing home in a healthy way. First thing is unplugging electrical devices when they're not in use. So we're all accustomed to this. I know I every day I if I turn the radio off or turn the TV off, it's still plugged in.
Right.
However, that leads to what's called phantom power usage, where these devices are still drawing small amounts of power, but enough that it can, affect your electric bill every month. And it also affects the electromagnetic fields or maintain some of these fields because it's still drawing amperage. So to reduce electromagnetic fields coming from devices when they're not in use, just unplug them. All right.
Simple.
Now, same is true with Wi-Fi.
Yes.
When you're not using Wi-Fi for internet access in the home, unplug the router. Don't just turn it off. Unplug it.
That's
and
what we
keep in
do.
mind that if you want to jump back on the internet, it's going to take a little bit for everything to sort of reboot, right?
Correct.
But you do what you got to do. I think that, I tell my clients to at least put your router on a timer where it shuts off every night at 10 o'clock. It doesn't pop on until 5 o'clock in the morning. That's one thing you can do. You can just get in the habit of unplugging it and plugging it back in again. Just kind of depends on what the family dynamics are. But eliminating the Wi-Fi signal from bouncing around the house while everybody's trying to sleep will drastically improve your sleeping patterns. And
I was
so
amazed. Yeah.
It is. And so it's the same thing as don't have your cell phone by the bed,
Right.
and all these little things that, you've probably heard and picked up in other locations, but folks, these things really do work.
Yeah. I was thinking when I'm booting up and I'm looking for my connection, I'll get a whole list of other connections.
Mm-hmm.
They're my neighbors.
Yes.
It's everyone around me. And there's literally dozens of connections. And I always say, boy, if I could walk outside and I could somehow visualize all the electrical stuff flying through the air, I would probably be scared to death to see all
I think so.
All the different waves. If it was a visual, it would be amazing.
If
We're
everybody's
surrounded by this.
if everybody's Wi-Fi signal was a different color line in the air, there'd be no way to avoid it. Now, this is why I say in building a new home, there are ways to mitigate that. There are ways to take care of that, to make your home a quiet home, as our friend Mike would say. Making it a quiet home, making it a home that's not affected by those things. And so that people inside aren't affected by those things.
What podcast was that?
Do what you can do.
What podcast was that?
That was Mike Bender.
Mike Bender. That's right.
Yes.
What a great show, folks. You do miss that one. Get into the archives at Non-Toxic Environments podcast and listen to Mike Bender and Andy talk about it. But what a great concept.
It really is. And so, we hope that you have either built or remodeled your home into a healthier home in the last several years since listening to our show.
Mm-hmm.
And we also hope that then these tips to maintain that will help. And if there's anything we miss, which I'm sure there is, because we aren't perfect. I'm sure there are many things we can add to this list. Please reach out to us and let us know. I would love to hear about it and maybe even do a second show on this.
Sure. I think so. Like there's a lot of things that we didn't miss. And there may be some great tips out there, folks, that you may know, great secrets you may have. Let's share them.
Exactly right. Well, folks, it's been a pleasure to be back in front of the microphone for you again. It's been a few weeks. Jay, thank you very much for being with me again this week.
Oh, yeah. That's what
we do. Everyone, we really appreciate your listenership. Please go to iTunes, give us a thumbs up or a 5-star rating and a review. We greatly appreciate it. Or if you listen to us on Spotify or any of those other places, just make sure to tell your family and friends about the show. And if there's anything that you think that we should talk about, a topic that interests you, give me an email, andy@degreeofgreen.com. I would love to hear from you and hopefully working into a show in these next coming months.
Yeah, I think that's great. And we'll probably have a chance to get into the mailbag again here pretty soon. It's probably going to be a lot of mail questions.
It's been a while and we have a lot of good questions that are stacking up. So we definitely should do that.
Okay.
All right, folks. We'll talk to you again soon. Jay, have yourself a wonderful weekend.
You too, Andy. Everyone take care.
Bye-bye.